Welcome back, everyone, to Unhoused and Unfiltered. I'm Nick Cook, Director of Public Policy for the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. And as always, welcome back to my friend
Rennie, Senior Director of Advocacy and Engagement at MICA. I'm so excited to be back. I have to admit, it was a little hard to come back from vacation, but thank you for holding down the fort.
We missed you. I had Amy and Eric. They're not Sarah Rennie, but I had co-hosts with me. But we how was it? How was your vacation? Everybody deserves a vacation.
It was wonderful. I got a week. My in-laws were turning 80. They had all their grandkids and their kids there, and we were, on a private lake in the Irish Hills in Michigan. Gotta love Michigan in August. It was just beautiful. Actually, like I said, a little hard to come back to the daily grind.
Yeah, I can imagine. The weather that week was perfect.
Exactly.
Hot as always. August, you're right. Those last few days of summer going into right before school year starts. It's always hard to give up those days.
And if you're not listening from Michigan, you got to spend time in Michigan because it's so beautiful. We had a pontoon boat. We got to go fishing. We just kind of chilled out, played games. It was fantastic.
That's wonderful, and I'm so glad to have you back. But I'm also glad you got a break with your family, because this job working in the unhoused community and the homeless community it can be draining. There is a
Oh,
lot
for
of
sure.
attacks. There's a lot of attacks going on across the board. Um, Service providers aren't paid well. They're getting burned out. People that are homeless are facing criminalization and being stigmatized. Uh, you know, so even advocating on it some days feels like we're on that hamster wheel, that proverbial hamster wheel, just going around and around in a circle, talking about the same things over and over again.
Absolutely. But it's still really important that we do. And thank goodness that we have the ability to do so, right? And we're able to work with folks who are doing amazing work. Um, just to bring us all back to Unhoused and Unfiltered, please like and subscribe. I am Sarah. This is Nick. We do this every week, and your likes, your subscribes, your reviews keep us moving, and joining MICA keeps us funded. So please consider becoming a member at myhomeless.org. We need your funding, we need your support because while we might feel like we're a hamster on the hamster wheel, this is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. And we just got to keep on fighting.
You know, you're exactly right, Sarah, and the amount of work and advocacy you have put into this is amazing. We all know about the FY2025 NOFO and your work on that. Um, but we had this thing that broke while you were gone, the FY2026 NOFO.
Right.
And I know during this podcast, if you're listening to us, we're going to have slides up. You can go to our YouTube page to see the slides. But we're going to talk about what's been going on. There's a lot of things happened while you were gone on the FY2026 NOFO. Some of it was exciting, some of it was good news, but then
Ish.
also it kind of put us in a strange position.
Exactly. And I want to first back up so folks remember what we're talking about. So the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which call is a NoFo, is the largest funding to the states from the federal government to support homeless services in Michigan. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's around about $110 million. It's a significant amount of money to help folks who are low income, precariously housed, and homeless. The impact, and we have been fighting these HUD changes now for over a year, 18 months. The impact of what HUD would like to do would affect about 100,000 people nationally, about 5,000 people in our state would lose housing, and there's about a $32 million cost. So essentially, HUD is declaring almost, I don't want to, is declaring that it has a better solution to homelessness. Unfortunately, that better solution is arresting people, taking away their rights, or placing them in institutions. As we've mentioned many, many times, those things are not available in Michigan. We don't have enough law enforcement. We don't have enough institutions. We don't have enough substance abuse beds. They also don't work. But in addition, we've been working on litigation against these changes because HUD can't just decide things.
Right.
We have a
Yep.
government and a process. And
And
if we can give folks your background, Nick, you can talk, maybe you can set out sort of why
yeah,
this sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is.
right. I mean, we are all told in grammar school, in elementary school, when you took your first intro to civics, that elections have consequences, and they do. The president, the governor, the mayors, they get to appoint people that can execute their mission, their vision of what government's supposed to do. And that sounds like what HUD is doing. This is the Trump administration's vision of how homeless services are going to be delivered. However, Congress enacts legislation, the executive executes, and then anything not explicitly given to Congress or to the president by the Constitution is reserved to the states. So herein lies the problem with this whole thing is HUD has been going around. Everybody keeps throwing out this term, the Administrative Procedures Act. And what this is a law enacted by Congress that if you are going to change things with programs, with funding that Congress explicitly sent to you with instructions on how to spend the money, how to execute the law, you have to do it within those parameters. And that's really kind of what these national groups have been arguing is they aren't following the Administrative Procedures Act. States were also talking about how they were violating states' rights on how they execute programs within their state boundaries. So that's kind of why it's a big deal. The violation of those tenets of the U.S. Constitution. And I'll let you get into the weeds on the detail. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I know a little bit about the law, but you're really the brains behind the operation.
No, I think that was perfect. And one of the things I think folks hear is blah, blah, blah process, as if it's not really, really important. This is all set up so that we don't have kinks. We don't have one person or one part of the government making decisions. It might be a little bit slower. It may not be sexy, right? Like you're not going to come out and have a declaration that says we're going to do X. But the reason it's set up like that is that we can have thoughtful, considered, democratic with a small d conversations about what's best. And so that people get to weigh in and we get to get experts and people who have been homeless, all of which get to speak to what is best practices. And what we're seeing when the 2025 NoFo, to go back in the Wayback Machine, dropped, it was shocking because it would have meant and forced significant numbers of people back into homelessness, changed the entire way we've been doing things, and radically sort of upset the apple cart. Now, you might be someone that says, hey, this isn't working. Why can't we do that? And it's because systems, it's like trying to turn the Titanic. You are immediately causing more harm than good. What you need to do, and the system, our entire 200 years of system, is set up to sort of make sure that we've thought through what the unintended consequences of any significant change is. And that's what the Administrative Procedures Act. So, in addition to the Administrative Procedures Act litigation that we had in 2025, there were also a host of things that were what we call sort of the meat and potatoes of constitutional law. So, you had all this process problem. HUD just decided, which we don't allow. We don't allow people to wake up one day who isn't elected. If you realize Secretary Turner's not elected, he's appointed, right? He's just someone that's been put into our executive system. We don't allow them just to completely radically change systems. So it'd be like waking up one day and finding out that your educational system, that the Department of Ed had decided we were only going to school 2 hours a day. Like we just don't do that because there are 50 different states with 50 different needs. These things have been thought through. Can there all be improvements? Absolutely. But there are mechanisms in place to create those improvements. Are they slow? Yes. Are they unsatisfying to some folks? Maybe. But there are also the law, and the law matters for a reason. So we litigated in 2025 under the Administrative Procedures Act, and then this host of legal constitutional issues. In the 2025 NoFo, in addition to not following any of the process, there were many things that arguably just straight up violated the the amendments. And one of them was they asked for your religion to get services. There were definitions of what disability was that didn't include mental health. It really sought to have people surrender their civil rights. It tried to make states sort of say that if they were going to get this money, they had to follow along and ask its citizens to to agree to arrest folks when that maybe isn't the state's desire. So, in addition to the separation of powers you talked about at the federal level, right? So we have Congress and the executive branch. We are set up on, and I'm studying Canadian law right now because I'm very interested. We're very different than most other countries in that the states come first. We keep all the power at the state, and then we give the government certain rights. The government doesn't have a lot of rights that the states doesn't give them. So a lot of this also implicated what the states could do. So we sued, and that was a long bit of litigation. And you'll see from the PowerPoint that there were two cases because it started to overlap. Because then, as we sued on the 2025 NoFo, things took time. We then got the 26 NoFo that had similar administrative problems and similar constitutional problems. So basically, HUD wasn't changing its tune at all in light of the court case. So we also had to sue in the 26 NoFo. So you've got two cases, both basically the same thing, just two different grant opportunities. We win on the 25 litigation, and then the 26 litigation also the court says, hey, we've already sort of decided this. You had to follow process. So we're going to say that the 26 NoFo is also vacated.
So we're good
So I
now,
want to
right,
ask you
Sarah? Like,
questions now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're, so they vacated the 25. We got
Yeah.
Congress to do the renewals. I mean, also we had the 2-year NoFo process. That was part of the litigation. But now the 26, the court has ruled that that's vacated. So we're good now, right?
Well, no. I mean, I believe in the rule of law and I believe in process. And just as HUD had to follow process, it also gets to process. So HUD has the right to appeal. It has appealed the 26 NoFo. It asked for an injunction, essentially saying, hey, while we're appealing, we need to go forward on this 26 NoFo. The lower court said no. Nope, you can appeal, but you still have to issue a different NoFo. So essentially, what the court said when it vacated the 26 NoFo, it said, you got to get a new one. You have to get this money out the door. Please follow the Administrative Procedures Act. Keep in mind, the court has never reached the big constitutional issues because it didn't have to. So that's super complicated. So I want you to ask questions, but where we're at right now is HUD is appealing. There is no Congress has said HUD, you have to get the money out the door by December 1. HUD is probably going to say, hey, I'm in litigation. There's going to be gaps in funding at the state level. And we need Congress probably to step up and say, hey, we need to fund everybody while all this litigation is going on. Does that make
And
sense?
yes, but not to be the naysayer of the group or the one that the Debbie Downer. But Congress has already passed the CR. They're not
Well,
going to take any action in this election year till December 10th. So does that mean we're kind of in this holding pattern while the HUD goes through the appeals and through and
yes.
possibly into December?
It does. And this is where huge shout out to Nick and Micah, um, who sort of so single-handedly, in case this happened, asked for state money to fill the gap. It's not enough, but there should be some money so there's not a catastrophe in Michigan. Michigan's the only one who sort of had the foresight. And again, that's because straight up because Nick went and yelled at people and sat in their offices and brought them coffee and demanded the legislature at the state level help. Um, so there is some money in Michigan to sort of cover for a short term because so we are not as desperate as other states. Other states, you're going to see people just losing their housing.
Yeah. And that's what the scary part is because we know from the administration's first FY25 NOFO to the FY26 NOFO that they really are focused on changing the paradigm. Right, wrong, or
Yeah.
indifferent. That's
Yes.
where that's what they want to do. You know, we heard it in the first court case that it is the administration's prerogative to change policy, but again, they have to follow the set rules that are in place. And the longer this takes, the more jeopardy our unhoused population is in.
Yeah, it was sort of a when the national folks were talking about suing, they really felt like they were damned if they do and damned if they didn't. The And let's be clear, it's not just, and I'm very passionate about this. I believe in the rule of law. I believe that elections have consequences. We still don't have kings, and we still don't have only one branch of government. So all the congressional elections also had consequences, and it's important to understand that what the executive branch is trying to do is against the law as it stands. So if really what this administration wanted done is they just should have gone to Congress and said, we'd like McKinney-Vento changed. We'd like these laws reviewed. There's a reason there's a separation of powers. But even assuming they could do it, which they can't, they still have to follow, at the very minimum, the Administrative Procedures Act, which they also didn't do. They also cannot, the executive branch never can go above the Constitution. And we have a Constitution in separation of church and state. We have definitions of what disabilities are under constitutional case law. It sort of was a giant overreach. And so HUD has not changed its giant overreach. They could have in 25 when it was clear the courts were like, hey, you can't do this. They're now appealing in 26. But the consequence of that is the money doesn't get out. So the national folks had this choice of letting all this unconstitutional stuff stand, or maybe forcing some folks to be unhoused because the money might not get there. And when I say Michigan's in a lucky position, we're in a better position, but it will get desperate the longer this goes on.
Yeah, and I think that's what our listeners need to hear is that we are all fighting um, to get money out the door to make sure that our homeless population stays housed. But if we just went along to get along, we were going to have people unhoused.
Yes.
And so,
Over 100,000.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, you know, the national folks, I was on calls, you were on calls where they actually had this debate. Do we let the NoFo go forward and deal with the consequences after, or do we actually sue to stop this NoFo from going forward because it's going to cause harm to so many people? And it was really a debate. And, you know, at the end of the day, everybody said sometimes you have to be on the right side of history as you move forward on these things. And if we had just allowed the administration to go forward and do things that violated separation of branches, the separation of powers, violated states' rights, violated law, you know, we would have just been condoning the next change
It's
that
correct.
they did.
And we've seen this administration is does take it is the next thing and the next thing. I would also like to point out, because this administration talks a lot about fraud and waste, every time these cases go into litigation, our folks on the ground have to go through the application process, which is months of work and writing and meetings with the service delivery. So they've lost months and months of work for NoFos that HUD probably knew, at least in 26, was not going to pass the court. So it's been a ton of stress for them, for our constituents, but also it's a huge waste. So clearly, this is not about ending homelessness, because there would have been easier ways to come to the table with everybody, have a conversation. This is about punishing folks who are in homelessness. This is about having a radical worldview of people in homelessness need to be arrested. That they are, I can't, maybe you can help me paraphrase the creating crime and disorder on America's streets.
Mhm.
And I will return to the fact that this is an economic problem and it's going to get worse, and we're going to see more homeless, and we're already seeing more folks on the street. And yes, some folks have mental health issues, some folks have drug use. Many are working, and I come back to 40% of Michiganders are one paycheck away from homelessness.
Yeah.
So we have this crisis that we want to criminalize rather than address.
Yeah. I mean, I heard it again. Uh, I read an article yesterday by the Kresge Foundation talking about the economic toll and the cost of living outpacing the increase in wages. And then this morning on the news, I heard a report about for a single person in the state of Michigan to live comfortably, they need to make $91,000 a year. For a family
Wow.
of four, it has to be over 220,000. So
And that's
you
just
just
not most folks. It just
no,
isn't.
no, and you look at the AMI for a family of four in the state of Michigan, it's 91,000. So that tells you the difference in you know
And so
what
what
we're
Nick means by the AMI is that that's for a family of four, we're nowhere near 200,000. We're at 91,000 for revenue for folks of family of four, which I think folks listening to this will gel with them. And I don't what feels true to folks, I think will resonate. Like if you go to the grocery store, I was shocked the last time I just had to buy like toiletries, how much things cost. We just don't have the purchasing power that we did even 3 years ago.
Yeah, I had that exact same conversation the other day when I was at the grocery store with my wife. Like I'm like, oh, I remember when this was when would go on sale for 99 cents a pound, and now we're talking it's on sale and it's 2.99 a pound. And it just blows my mind just in the short time span that the cost of living has increased so much. And if you're somebody that's living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, and you have young children, or you have elderly family that lives with you, in a blink of an eye you could be out of your house because you can't keep up with the standard of living, and pay rent, pay um,
Pay your medical
utilities.
bills. My son
Yeah.
lost his job. He's now got another one, but his Cobra as a single man hit to carry his insurance, and he had to have insurance because he's got some chronic issues, was $900 a month. That was how much it cost him for 3 months. I mean, we obviously had to help him because
Yeah.
he's a custodian, right? Like otherwise he'd have been stuck between affording his medication or his rent, which is $1,100 a month, right? His
Yep.
unemployment was 1,800. Like the math doesn't math for folks who have worked. And he was a full-time good employee. It was just one of those, outsourcing situations. So the question is, how are we going to help folks who are in this working class struggling situation, rather than say, okay, well now you're sleeping in your car because you did lose your housing, right? So now you should be arrested. Like that
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense either.
no, and I think one fact that is forgotten a lot is a majority of the homeless individuals do have jobs.
Yes.
Um, th- it varies by encampments. I'm not going to say every encampment 100% of the individuals, but a vast majority are working poor. If you go past a Meijer or a Walmart late at night and you see cars further out in the parking lot with people sleeping in them, most of the time those are senior citizens or working class young adults that can't afford a place to live and they're sleeping in their car. It's sad that we've gotten to this place as the greatest nation on earth, uh, that we have people sleeping in cars and parking lot because they can't afford a place to sleep.
So to return, yeah, absolutely. And I think, and we talk about this all the time, there are also folks who have chronic and persistent mental illnesses that we need better care for, and folks who need substance. I mean, I keep coming back to the opioid settlement was an opioid settlement for a reason. There's no doubt that many folks were, their doctors overprescribed. They became addicted for no fault of their own. And the sudden, you know, weird movement towards if you're an opioid addict, you're bad is very different than everything we've learned about the why there's an opioid crisis. So all of those things are true and real and hard. We have to have, which is why the Administrative Procedures Act has you take time to hear from folks so that we can craft the right solution for the domestic violence survivor, for the opioid addict, and for folks who simply need, a little bit of help back into first and last month's rent. They're different needs, but none of them are crimes and none of them
Right.
should be involved in arresting. So as we move forward, my question is, you know, we know that this is probably going to have some financial gap. How are we going to, Nick, work together? What is the collective action that we're thinking about doing? I have a lot more I can go into about the procedural posture, but at the end of the day, what really matters is this is going to get appealed and there's probably going to be a delay and people are going to lose their houses for the funding.
So right before we get it, but what can happen during this appeal process?
It's
Can
a
you
good
lay
question.
that, like, I guess as somebody that again only stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, um could you explain, like, what are the options and what can happen during this phase of the court case?
So the court, um, HUD has already asked the lower court, the court that vacated the NoFo for a stay to say, I don't want your decision to go forward. The lower court, not surprisingly, was like, no, our decision stands. It's not going to be stayed while you appeal. The next step is HUD will ask the um, appellate court for a stay. It is, I think, unlikely they're going to get a stay. That means they will have to, theoretically, under the law, issue a new NoFo and get it by December 1st. The question will be, one, will they do it, right? Or will they say it's not possible? Two, will the NoFo be any better, or will it also not follow the Administrative Procedures Act and have all these constitutional violations, therefore creating yet more delay because we'll have to go back to the court and say, hey, this writing is no better than the previous writing. And we're hearing no desire on the part of HUD to be in compliance, or to sort of say, okay, fine, you've made your point. We'll find some middle ground. So theoretically, what should happen is they should issue a new NoFo. It should be out the door by December 1. The money should go, and the new NoFo should be something, without radical changes. It'll probably should look exactly like the one in 24. It is unlikely, given the history of this administration, that that will be the case. So what will likely happen is that they will either issue nothing, or what they do issue will contain the same problems that we've seen in 25 and 26.
Yeah, and the 1 December date that you keep referencing for our listeners out there, that 1 December came out of the FY2026 Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Appropriations budget. So that's where so that again goes into that separation of power. Congress has the power of the purse, told them when they have to do this by. Uh, but also, Congress has the Hearth Act, which defines the COC program, the goals, and sets up the program. And HUD can't just go around the Hearth program. This was a congressionally directed program. So, there are a lot of things out there still yet to be answered. And I think it's going to be a drawn out process. And you asked me, what can people do? We
Well,
have to talk. Go
I just
ahead.
want to finish out what could happen. So then, as it goes on to an appeal, the court will hear oral arguments. It'll take several months. The appellate court could agree with the lower court, affirm it, could reverse the decision, or the court could say, "Hey, we want the lower court to consider this and do what's called vacate and remand," which basically would start over. If the HUD loses at the appellate level, it can still go to the Supreme Court. So it can ask to go to the Supreme Court. Most things are denied on request for certiorari, but it could. So we're looking at some pretty significant time and structure. And so when we set the table of what people can do, hopefully I'm wrong. I like to be wrong on these situations where I think HUD's not going to necessarily comply. Um, but most likely scenario is we're going to need something else, some public pressure to make HUD act, um, to make sure this money gets out the door, or to have Congress make sure that the money gets out the door, so people aren't freezing to death by January.
Right. And I think that's the collective action we're asking people to do is talk to your members of Congress. Let them hear from you. Let them understand the impact to their community, to the unhoused, to those with senior citizens, to those with disabilities that rely on HUD to stay housed. You think of the housing choice vouchers. You think of, I mean, all these things are impacted.
And so our listeners who aren't housing folks know what all of these are money that keeps very, very low income folks, often who are mentally ill or, working three jobs. These are government subsidies that help pay families' rent, and support, not all of it, but supports families' rent. And so without them, those folks just won't have anywhere to live.
And in most cases, these are ran by small nonprofits um, that if they go under or they no longer exist because of the funding being uh, dragged out, that community goes without services. And I think that's the bigger conversation. The longer this goes on, our nonprofits that do this government action on behalf of the government um, are vulnerable. And I think that really needs to be heard from people. They don't make a lot of money. We've talked about it here before that, even in the emergency shelter program in the state of Michigan, they only get $19 a day per diem per bed. And that's not a whole lot of money.
Well, and I would like us, and if you haven't had a chance for our listeners to listen to our episode with True North, because I'm a rural girl, I get sometimes I'm from the rural community. I get frustrated at how much of this ignores the impact in rural communities. You hear so much, and not that there isn't absolute need in the urban communities, but some of these nonprofits, they're the chief cook and bottle washer for a, community of 50,000 people. They are the hub, and you need them, right? They are the anchor, and they're the ones that are making sure that people are not, freezing to death in the woods, or dying in somebody's back 40. And we really need to consider the rural communities' needs differently and how this destabilization is really going to affect Northern Michigan, Upper Peninsula, um, places where there's already a high poverty level, and these nonprofits are really significant anchors.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sarah. And, that's again going back to that collective action. We need everybody's voice out there talking to their members of Congress, writing into their members of Congress. As we get more details of the uh, appeals process of the NoFo, we will be putting stuff on our website at myhomeless.org, having calls to action, asking Congress to act, because our most vulnerable members of our communities are going to be living day to day. It really, until this funding is sorted out, um, it's going to take a lot of people working countless hours to keep people housed.
I'd also add, in addition to talking to your reps and your member of Congress, start talking in your community. Explain the situation. I'm seeing, you see online, and there's all of this press about, like the 5 people we talked about that were living in front of the library in Jackson, and there's all of this, people are choosing to be homeless. This separation, so we don't have to be responsible. Start countering that narrative to be maybe our services aren't correct, but they're not choosing to be homeless. Maybe they don't fit, the services doesn't meet their needs, and start talking to your local officials about how this is an unfunded mandate because communities, small rural communities, are more moderate than not. It's all about whether they can balance their budget. And so the question is where's this money going to come from for a rest, for these beds they're supposed to have, for putting people in mental health care that doesn't exist. When your community figures out that that's supposed to be borne by the local community, many of your local officials can also help support you. They don't have the money in their budget.
Yeah, and I'd like to also uh, give a shout out to our landlords and real estate brokers that take housing choice voucher program that support permanent supportive housing. That they're also going to be impacted by these decisions. They will lose revenue. They will lose tenants, and now those properties are going to sit empty because there's just not the opportunity for people to maintain living in those places, which then causes them to go through eviction proceedings and all kinds of other things if nobody steps up, which is a drain on their pocket. So it really is going to take the whole community talking about this issue and stepping up and saying, we need these programs. We need the funding. We need to continue supporting our most vulnerable populations.
Well, and along those lines, as you've said, shout out to law enforcement who was already sometimes in Indiana taking a huge stand that this is not what they signed up for. They didn't sign to put poor people in jail. They signed up to get the bad guys. Talk to your local law enforcement, make sure they understand that this is more of a burden for them. Most of the time, they're very sympathetic. They don't want to be arresting some mom with 2 kids or some deeply mentally ill person. They want to, be doing what they were trained to do.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. And as always, you and I are the bearers of the light and bring joy to everybody's day. But we have something kind of cool going on this week
We
in
do.
Micah.
We do. We celebrate each year, and I really cannot stress how incredible this group of folks we're going to name is. It's been a rough year if you're in direct service provision. And every year, Micah gets together. Another reason to join Micah, because you get to help select these folks. We get together and have what's called the Breakfast of Champions, where we celebrate people who have done extraordinary work across the state. And I really want to highlight a few of those folks because I think we need to sometimes end on a positive note, and also they inspire me. They're the people that keep me keeping on because they just every day are out there kind, giving absolute grace to people, hearing their stories and trying to get them housed. Our first award winner is someone who I think is just amazing and probably should be governor. I think he's dynamic and incredible and has really hit the ground running. Jim Davis from Family Promise of West Michigan is the advocacy champion. I know, Nick, you've had an opportunity to work with Jim. He's really been just an incredible advocate for folks in poverty.
Yes, he has great connections. He's passionate about this, and he's just a funny guy to be around, and you can't help but feel positive when you're talking to him. But you know, another champion that we have here is Eleanor Bradford from the Homeless Action Network of Detroit. She's the community champion. I've known her for quite a few years now, and she is just Fireball, cares about her community, wants to work hard for everybody, and wants to see the best out of everybody.
And along those lines, we can't do what we do without data. And that may sound sexy, but we do want to elevate the fact that data collection helps us make sure that we're helping the right people with the right resources. So Teresa Schrant of Resilience Advocates for Ending Violence is our data champion. And I am just so excited how far that Michigan's like because of people like Teresa, we are at the forefront of data analysis. We are one of the national leaders.
And so many of our nonprofits rely on volunteers and people wanting to give to their community. And so many of them go unsung. In fact, this next winner, who is our volunteer champion, I didn't even know what he did until we see the write up come into the office. And Dr. Mark Poletti with Biking with a Purpose, uh, the amount of time and energy he has put towards helping homeless organizations in his community is such an amazing legacy to leave for himself and for his community. So
Yeah,
great
and if you don't
impact
know
there.
about their story, go to their website, Biking with Purpose. It's very cool. It's a great idea of how you can get involved, and it's just remarkable. And again, we're doing this not just to talk about who Micah says is great, but so that you know that there are these sort of shining lights out there who are doing incredible work and just with no expectation of recognition. And I think just amazing to have the position to be like, hey, these guys are really great. And along those lines, I have worked with, and these folks are deeply close to my heart. I've been privileged to work with youth homeless folks who were formerly homeless, who are youth, age 18 to 24. And these young folks are so resilient and so kind to one another. They really give you hope because like they support each other and they're nice and they're deeply invested in making the world a better place. And so our youth champions with the light board, which is supported by Lighthouse, and they're just an incredible group of young folks who have really centered the importance of understanding the unique needs of youth. And we have, as you know, young folks are one of the leading populations of increase in homelessness.
Yeah, and we see that across the state, across the nation, in every community. We continue to see this rising trend of youth homelessness. Um, but every year in November, we have a call to action for Homeless Awareness Month. November is Homeless Awareness Month. We like highlighting everything that's going on in that month, and every year we ask the COCs communities to really dive into that. And this year's Homeless Awareness Month champion was the Macomb County Continuum of Care. They just went above and beyond getting the message out there, sharing what homelessness means in their community and what homelessness and housing insecurity means to everybody in that community. And every community does something, but Macomb County just went above and beyond this past year, and want to thank them for raising
Well,
awareness.
And it's
for our.
particularly important, right, when we're hearing so much about how so much negative messaging, right? That Macomb County took the opportunity to really share what it meant for their community and that there are ways forward.
Yeah. And, as always, as we come to the end of the podcast, we do this because of our listeners. We do this because we care about this work, but we can't continue to do this without you. So if you are interested in becoming a member of MICA, go to mihomeless.org, become a member today, sign up. And if you like what you hear from us, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, your neighbors, your cousins, your grandmother. Get the word out. This is your chance to share what homelessness and housing insecurity in the state of Michigan means to you, to your community, and just to share how this impacts the entire state.
Yeah, and if you've been on the fence and you've been listening to us and you've been like, well, I should do that, but I've got stuff to do, the time is now. We need your help. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And as you hear, we were working hard to help folks in poverty in Michigan. And the more voices we have as our members, the better. And we need to continue to drive ourselves up in the algorithm so people actually hear our message. So please like and subscribe, become a member of MICA, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, everyone.